Hello and welcome to Never a Truer Word, where we look at the words that people choose to use to see if they're telling the truth, the whole truth, or nothing but the truth. And this is a bonus episode looking at your questions and comments following the episode on the press conference about the disappearance of Samantha Murphy. If you haven't taken in that episode yet, then there's a link to it in the description for this. I suggest you look at that one first. Thank you so much for all the questions and comments that came in. As always, some really insightful observations on the content that we looked at. Let's start with Gemma, who says that was hard to watch and listen to, especially when Sam's daughter spoke. I agree. It sounds like they think Sam possibly left of her own accord. Both dad and daughter seem very genuine. Gemma, yeah, I agree. I think that the words that we looked at point to the fact that they believe that Sam took the decision herself to disappear. Both dad and daughter seem very genuine. Yeah, I didn't see them hiding things. I didn't see them try to build alibis or tell deceptive stories at all. Gemma also says there's hopefulness, and speaking of Sam in the present tense. I wonder if the lack of concern is because she might have walked out and they're assuming that she's safe but unwilling to return as of yet. I agree with all of that, Gemma. Thank you for your comment. Gray says, lots of red flags, to be honest, e.g. the first thing spoken of before a person is found should ideally not be extreme thankfulness to the searchers' supporters, as nothing has actually been achieved yet. Now, Gray, I gave that one a bit of a pass, because if you look at the words that Mick uses, he says, afternoon, everyone. He talks about deciding to do a press conference, and then he talks about around the search for Sam. So he mentions her first and the search for her first before going in to thank the searchers and supporters. I think he found it very easy to talk about them compared to how difficult he found it to talk about Sam. He was much more generic about the search and about Sam than he was about the supporters, which I found very interesting. But he did mention the search for Sam before he mentioned the searchers and supporters. There was no plea from the husband to his wife or possible captor. Agreed, I noted that. And he asked for less connection with people outside the family. So great, yeah, red flags pointed up there. A comment on Twitter. I think that when Jess says she'd be mad at her mom when she comes back, that was just her trying to laugh, if only for a second, during what are clearly very trying times for her and her family. It's also one glimpse of hope. Now, I agree. It could have been, especially Jess is quite young, it could have been a bit of immaturity that she doesn't quite know the right thing to say there. And it was her just trying to lighten the moment. And she was very, very upset when she was talking. So it could have been that. But I do think it was just a strange comment to give. The comment goes on, Jess wasn't victim blaming at all to me. And I agree with that. What I think is, if Sam had been abducted or has been abducted, then Jess was blaming the victim there for me. You know, you've been abducted. That's no fault of your own, but I'm going to tell you off for giving you stress. I really didn't like that. What I think actually is that Jess and Mick think that they and the family are the victims in all of this, and less so Sam. So I don't think they see Sam as the victim here. And I think that's what came through in that comment. Sam is the instigator and not the victim. So thank you very much for your comment. I believe the logic she's using there, it goes on, is if she's able to be mad at her mom for whatever happened, that means she's still alive, and that could well be the truth. Jess comments also on that tell you off for giving us so much stress quote that the daughter Jess gave. Jess says that comes across to me as some light-hearted humour and a little strange from someone talking and crying about a truly horrible predicament. Yeah, it stood out to me as just a very strange comment that I think comes from a situation that Jess and Mick are aware about, but they haven't spoken outwardly about that yet. Darklands says, Mick doesn't like speaking in public. We saw that he was very nervous about it and yet showed up with no prepared speech. Jess made a prepared speech, which means Mick already knew what Jess was going to say. Now, that's just an assumption. It could be that Mick knew what Jess was going to say. It might be that Jess just pulled this out at the moment. So it's an assumption. I think it's a good assumption, but it's not 100% fact that we know. This fits with him choosing to withhold doing a direct plea. Well, yes, it could. It also fits with the matriarchal position in the household. Jess telling her mom off without stressing about stressing them also backs up the matriarchal position she has taken on. And I think, yeah, Jess really was acting as if she was the mother of the family and not Sam. This is really interesting point from Darklands. Requesting the press to back off also fits with the willingly left theory. Wanting it to be safe outside the house, and both of them did ask for privacy around the house. So wanting it to be safe outside the house, not just for her, but in case her mum decides to return. Sam wouldn't walk through the door like Jess wants her to if all the press is waiting outside, waiting on her every move. I think it's a really good and interesting point. They both focused in on that request for privacy around the house, and it could be to do with that. Darklands goes on. Jess is visual in her description of her mum's return, which leads me to think she has pictured the idea already, and that's very, very possible. Darklands, thank you very much for that comment. Bella says, my first thoughts are, why didn't he talk about Sam? What is she like? What was she wearing? Whether or not it's been said before. Talking directly to whomever could have taken her, talking directly to her as if she could hear him talking, etc. And yeah, it was really noticeable that Mick, he didn't talk about Sam for the last 4/5 of what he said. He was very generic about the search and talked in much more detail about the help that the family had received. Bella does say, but also maybe it's just complete nerves. And yes, I think we can all identify with that. Even, from school through to work life, when you've stood up to say something, give a presentation or so on, and you get to the end of it and you're really nervous and you go, oh, I forgot to say that, or oh, I forgot to cover that off. So that could be what's happening there. Mick was certainly nervous, certainly stressed. You saw a lot of stuttering in certain parts of what he says. So it could be the nerves that just made him not say what he wanted to say. And we've got to give him some benefit of the doubt there. Nothing that I say is an absolute. Nothing that I notice proves something or disproves something or says this is the truth or this is a lie. We just look for data points, and if we see enough of them, then we can say it's fairly likely that this has happened or it's fairly unlikely this has happened. But I do think we have to give Mick the benefit of the doubt. Nerves could play a big part in why his statement was so odd. Hello to Musical Neptune. Thank you for this comment. The part where Jess says that Sam will win the fight, that strikes me as the language usually seen around an illness. Someone had cancer and you will say they will win the fight against it. Combined with Jessie's statement about scolding her, it shows that she sees Samantha as mentally diminished in some way, possibly mentally ill. A great comment, Musical Neptune. Musical Neptunian, by the way. Great username as well. Thank you for the comment. I think that that's a really good analogy. Win this fight is what Jess said, and that suggested to me a very specific fight, like against an illness that Jess was referencing, rather than just the fight in general. On that same comment, Quink says she doesn't mean fist fight, she means fighting for her life, whether she left with mental health problems, was abducted, or fell and is hurt. Now, I know she doesn't mean fist fight. Maybe I didn't make that clear enough. I think that there was, though, a specific fight in Sam's life, whether it's a health issue, whether it's some pressure she was under, whether it is mental health problems, that Jess was referencing there, because she said this fight. If it was all those things that you're mentioning, and they're all valid things that Jess could mention, then she would, I believe, say it in slightly different terms, like my mum's a fighter, or something like that, rather than she wouldn't give up this fight. Comment also on that comment from Shauna, this fight to have the search continued, not a physical fight. I agree, it's not a physical fight, but there is a specific fight that Jess is mentioning, but I don't believe it's the fight to have this search continued. That is not a fight that Sam is fighting at all. No matter what condition she's in, no matter where she is, she does not have a fight to have the search continued. She might hope that the search continues if she's in some desperate circumstances, but she cannot influence that fight whatsoever. So it was a fight she was in. This fight is what Jess said. So it's something more specific than the fight to have the search continued. But thank you for your comment, Shauna. Hello, Hooverfish, who sent this comment. I was wondering if him, that's Mick, I was wondering if him saying to report any little thing is some sort of misdirection. so people don't think to report any big thing like they saw a suspicious vehicle. Now, I did mention that he seemed to focus on little things and someone and some knows something. It was very generic, but and he, thought, even if you think it's irrelevant or whatever, I think is what he said. Now it could be misdirection. It could be that he's hoping the police get flooded with little things so that they're too overwhelmed to actually do any searching. But I don't really think that is what's going on. That would take a lot of thought and a lot of deviousness, and I didn't see any else of that in any of the words that Mick was saying. So I think when he's wanting any little thing is the fact that he feels like there is nothing to go on right now. He's actually, in his words, seemed very open to information, any kind of information coming from any kind of source that would help them know where Sam is. They always talked about this search for Sam and finding her. So I think that is what it is. I think there's nothing to go on now. While they may know or have a really good feeling about why is that she's left, I don't think they know anymore, and they do want to find her. Thanks for your comment, Hooverfish. KC Sunrise is next and says the fact that he said her disappearance sounds like he is distancing himself from her. Yeah, her disappearance stood out a lot to me. It is minimizing. You saw the emotion, you saw the nerves, and yet her disappearance certainly minimizes what has gone on. It could certainly be distancing. It wasn't my wife's disappearance or the disappearance, which would suggest, some sort of joint ownership. He gave ownership to Sam of the disappearance. It's her disappearance. It's not a disappearance for everyone. It's her disappearance. I did find her disappearance jumped out as why did he choose to say that? Hello, Carmel. Thank you for your comment. This press conference was held only 4 days after the disappearance. Some of his statements were quite premature, I feel. Carmel, I agree with that. This story came to me maybe about 3.5 to 4 weeks after Samantha went missing, and I watched the press conference and went, oh, that's really interesting. I'm going to analyse the statements that are given in that. And as I was doing that, I assumed that the press conference was maybe 2.5, 3 weeks after the disappearance of Samantha. But because of some of the things they said and some of the futility that seemed to come through in their statements, and to find out that it was only 4 days after the disappearance, I thought, yeah, there's something really strange about how soon some of the thoughts they seem to have formed have come to. And don't forget, when does someone disappear? Well, obviously, it's really from the moment they were last seen. That's when the disappearance happens. But psychologically, you don't process it at that moment. There may be a period of worry. Has she disappeared? Hasn't she disappeared? Is she going to come back any minute now? And then eventually, psychologically, it sinks in that a disappearance has happened. So it's kind of psychologically shorter than those 4 days. And yet they had those statements that felt kind of futile in ways. So Carmel, great point. Carla, thank you for your comment. Carla says, I reckon the husband is the one that knows what happened to Samantha. The whole was well thought and carried out. Bring on lie detectors. It has something to do with money. I would start with the husband again. He is hiding something. Right, let's break that down into parts, Carla. I reckon the husband is the one that knows what happened to Samantha. Now, I would agree with what I saw in the words that the husband has a fair idea of why Samantha has gone missing. I don't think he knows where Samantha is or anything like that. I did not see that in the words. I just think he knew or has a real idea or really, really good guess about why Samantha disappeared. The whole thing was well thought and carried out. I didn't see any of that in the words. I didn't see any guilty knowledge. I didn't see them building alibis or doing some deceptive storytelling at all. So I'm not sure I agree with that part. Carla, it has something to do with money. Yes, we did point out that when he's thanking the supporters, the community, he talks about their generosity. Now, that was over the 3 or 4 days that we've seen, but he already is going to generosity and said that meant he wouldn't have to buy food from the supermarket for 12 months. So I did wonder if the mention of generosity and buying food, there was some kind of money troubles, money issues. inside that family, maybe causing some pressure. I do think money could very possibly be at the centre of this. I would start with the husband again. He is hiding something. Now, Carla, in fairness to Mick, we don't know if he's hiding something. I don't think he was telling us everything at the press conference, but is that him withholding information in totality, or has he spoken to the police about a lot more than he mentioned at the press conference? It could well be that, because if, and this is just if Sam went missing because she's depressed or has some mental health issues or under a lot of pressure and wanted a break and wanted an escape, that doesn't mean something bad hasn't happened to her. It doesn't mean she hasn't fallen over on her run and has not been discovered. It doesn't mean she hasn't been abducted or worse as well. You know, bad things happen to people who are depressed or unhappy just as much as they happen to people who aren't depressed or unhappy. And actually, potentially, it's a police tactic that they think is highly likely that Samantha disappeared of her own accord. She wanted to get out of there. But if they came out and said that, would the search be so widely adopted by people? Would the story be so widely spread? And would the police be doing their job if they said something that didn't get people searching for Samantha? Because if she has left of her own volition, it doesn't mean something bad hasn't happened to her. And if the police think that there's a chance of finding her or think there's a chance that something has happened to her, then they would be acting the right way if they don't let some of that information out. So we don't know. I do agree with you that Mick is hiding something or not saying everything inside this press conference, but we don't know he hasn't said more to the police. And finally, a comment here. The dude who is summing up the words used didn't mention, by the way, that dude is me. The dude who is summing up the words used didn't mention how the father used the word subject to finish one of his comments. That seems like a fairly neutral word to use, considering that he is speaking about the disappearance of his loved one. I agree with that. I did point out that Mick said that he needed some information to shine some light on this subject. And I felt that was distancing or minimizing what had happened, very much like her disappearance. And I found that very interesting. Why did he talk in such generic terms, shine some light on the subject, rather than more specific ones, help us find Sam? It just added to that impression I got that Sam disappeared through his statement. 4/5 of it did not mention her. It was all very generic, and shine some light on the subject was another one of those strange things that he said to me that got me so interested in this. Thank you very much for your comments and questions. I think they are really insightful, and it's been really interesting to read those across the week. If you've got any more comments, then you can comment here. If you can, always interested to hear what it is you have to say, or you can connect on social media. If you go to neveratruerword.com, you can find out how to connect on the socials. Pressing the like button will take you 0.3 of a second, but will help this get out to more people. You can also share this, and I know lots of people do share videos and podcasts like this, which is great. It helps to get to more people. If you know someone that's interested in the disappearance of Samantha Murphy, or someone who just wants to know more about how to look at the words people use to understand what's going on around them, then the share button would be great to use. And if you subscribe or follow, that means you'll get more content like this as and when it happens. Neveratruerword.com is the website. You can find all the connections to the social medias there. I'd love to hear from you there. You can sign up for the newsletter. You can find more podcasts and more videos as well. And we'll see you for another episode soon from Never a Truer Word.